That's why Schopenhauer's ultimate lesson wasn't about women at all. It was about freedom from the will. He called it the denial of the will to live. But in modern terms, it means mastering the art of emotional detachment, to no longer be driven by your cravings, fears, or desires. He wrote, "Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. You can't stop desire from arising, but you can stop it from controlling you. That's where power begins." To Schopenhauer, detachment was not coldness. It was clarity. When you detach emotionally, you begin to see the world as it is, not through the lens of need or longing, but through awareness. You start to recognize patterns, care, how your emotions rise and fall, how attraction blinds you, how attachment weakens you. And with every observation, you gain distance. That distance is your freedom. Schopenhauer said that people suffer because they are possessed by their will. The will wants endlessly. More love, more comfort, more pleasure, more validation. It never stops. But when you become aware of this inner will, you stop identifying with it. You start to watch it. And the moment you become the watcher, not the chaser, you evolve. This is the Stoic power Schopenhauer's philosophy shares with Marcus Aurelius and Seneca.
The ability to remain calm in the storm of emotion, to see desire rise,
and simply let it pass. The emotionally detached man is not numb. He still feels, but he chooses when and how to respond. He doesn't beg for love. He doesn't demand attention. He gives because he wants to, not because he fears losing. Women feel this energy instantly. It's the quiet confidence that says, "I enjoy your presence, but I don't depend on it." That energy cannot be faked. It comes only from self-awareness, from a man who has faced loneliness, pain, and rejection, and turned them into wisdom instead of resentment. Schopenhauer warned that the man who fears being alone will always be enslaved by others. He said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, because solitude strips away illusion. It forces you to meet yourself without distraction. When you spend time alone, not out of sadness, but out of strength, you begin to rebuild your power from within. You learn to enjoy your own company. You stop chasing noise and start listening to silence. And in that silence, you begin to hear the truth. You don't need to be loved to be valuable. You don't need validation to feel worthy. You don't need attention to feel alive. That's when you start living as Schopenhauer intended. Free from the chains of the will, you still participate in the world, and you love, you work, you create, but you are no longer owned by any of it. This is what he called transcending the will through intellect. It means using reason, awareness, and self-discipline to rise above your primitive impulses, to love without attachment, to desire without dependence, to live without constant need. When a man masters detachment, something powerful happens. He becomes unreactive. He stops chasing and starts attracting. He doesn't try to control women. He controls himself. And in that control, he discovers real peace. The kind of peace no relationship can give or take away. Women are naturally drawn to this energy, not because it's mysterious, but because it's rare. A man who doesn't seek validation feels like safety. A man who isn't ruled by emotion feels like power. Schopenhauer's brutal wisdom wasn't meant to make men bitter. It was meant to awaken them, to make them realize that peace doesn't come from winning women's hearts, but from mastering your own mind. It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. Schopenhauer, that's the essence of emotional detachment. Finding peace inside yourself so completely that no rejection, no heartbreak, and no illusion can take it away. Because the man who doesn't need to be loved to feel whole is the one who finally understands what Schopenhauer meant all along. Freedom is not in possession, it's in perception, and love, when freed from attachment, becomes not a trap but a choice. Schopenhauer lived centuries ago, but his truth burns brighter today than ever before. We live in a world that constantly feeds the will. Endless desires, endless comparisons, endless distractions. From social media to dating apps, everything whispers the same message. You're not enough yet. You need more money, more status, more love, more attention. But Schopenhauer warned, the will never rests. The moment you feed it, it grows stronger, and the stronger it grows, the emptier you feel. He said, every satisfaction is only the starting point for another desire. That's why men today, even surrounded by comfort and opportunity, still feel restless, trapped by invisible chains of wanting more. To live above desire doesn't mean rejecting the world. It means using the world without being used by it. It means knowing that success, love, and pleasure are temporary experiences, not your identity. The Stoics said, control what you can, accept what you can't. Schopenhauer went one step further. He said, transcend the need to control it all. Detach from the will itself, and you'll find peace beyond victory or defeat. But how does a modern man apply this? It begins with self-awareness. Before you can control your life, you must observe your mind. Notice how desire rises in you, how it pulls, how it whispers. See how easily peace disappears the moment you crave approval or validation. The trick isn't to fight the will. It's to watch it. Like a calm observer. The more you watch, the weaker it becomes. And slowly you begin to rise above it. Schopenhauer believed that wisdom is not in getting what you want, but in wanting less. Because when you want less, you suffer less. And when you suffer less, you think more clearly. You make better choices, not out of desperation, but from strength. A man who doesn't crave attention becomes magnetic. A man who doesn't chase women becomes attractive. A man who doesn't react to emotion becomes unshakable, because people can sense when you're free. They can feel it, even without words. Freedom isn't about isolation. It's about control, the ability to love without losing yourself, to be fully present, but never enslaved, to enjoy beauty without being consumed by it. Schopenhauer's philosophy leads to a powerful truth. When you no longer need anyone to complete you, you become complete in yourself. And from that completeness, real love is born, not from lack but from overflow. He said, compassion is the basis of morality. Once you've conquered your will, you begin to see others not as tools for your desire, but as fellow travelers, each one trapped just like you once were, in the cycle of wanting and suffering. This compassion doesn't make you weak, it makes you human and truly wise. Because when a man understands that everyone is fighting their own invisible battle, he stops judging and starts observing. He becomes patient, silent, centered. The world hasn't changed much since Schopenhauer's time. Only the illusions have new shapes. Men still chase pleasure and power. Women still embody the will of life. And the few who rise above, they become philosophers, warriors, and sages. The goal isn't to escape desire completely. That's impossible. The goal is to never let desire own you. To let it exist, but never dictate your peace. To overcome the desires of the will is to reach true freedom. Schopenhauer. That's the timeless psychology secret he left behind. Freedom doesn't come from women, wealth, or fame. It comes from the stillness within, from knowing that you are whole, even when the world gives you nothing. When you master detachment, love transforms. You no longer love to possess. You love to understand. You no longer seek to be seen. You see yourself clearly. And in that clarity, you realize what Schopenhauer always knew. Happiness belongs to those who have learned to live without it. Because the man who doesn't chase peace becomes it. And the man who doesn't cling to desire transcends it. There's a certain silence that surrounds the truth, the kind of silence most people run away from. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most misunderstood philosophers in history, dared to speak that silence out loud. He didn't care if the world hated him for it. He only cared about truth, even if it hurt. Schopenhauer once said, "Women are governed not by logic, but by emotion." A sentence that has echoed through centuries, stirring anger and reflection alike. But what did he really mean? Was he a misogynist or just a man who saw the unfiltered reality of human nature? Schopenhauer wasn't speaking against women. He was speaking about the nature of desire itself. He believed that both men and women are slaves to the will. that invisible force that drives all living beings to survive, reproduce, and continue life's endless chain. But in that chain, he saw women as nature's agents, the embodiment of life's will to reproduce, and that, he said, is where the illusion begins. Because when a man meets a woman, he doesn't see reality, he sees projection, he sees the beauty, the softness, the warmth, but not the biological will hidden underneath. To Schopenhauer, the attraction between a man and a woman isn't love. It's nature using both as pawns to fulfill her purpose and to create life. He wrote, "Love is an illusion that tricks the individual into serving the species." In other words, what you think is your heart choosing someone is actually nature's trick, pushing you to ensure the survival of humanity. You're not loving her. You're loving the idea of continuity, wrapped in beauty and emotion. And when that biological spell fades, when the illusion breaks, reality returns. Arguments replace passion. Silence replaces excitement. The same woman who once felt like destiny now feels like distance, because the truth is, the relationship was never built on reason. It was built on the will. Schopenhauer saw this as a form of cosmic manipulation, not cruelty, but design. He said, "The will to live is the root of all suffering, and because women represent that will, they become, unknowingly, the carriers of mankind's endless struggle between desire and peace." But here lies the paradox. Even though he exposed the illusion of love, Schopenhauer also believed that recognizing it could set a man free. Once you understand that attraction is a biological force, not a divine fate, you gain power over it. You no longer chase blindly. You no longer suffer. When she leaves, you see her, and yourself, as part of nature's game. This is what Schopenhauer meant by freedom through awareness. Man who understands desire doesn't become cold. He becomes calm. He still loves, but not from attachment, from choice. He doesn't demand validation. He doesn't chase approval, because he knows no matter how beautiful the illusion, it's still an illusion, and yet ironically, this awareness makes him more attractive. A man who isn't enslaved by desire radiates something rare, control. In a world where men lose themselves chasing women, he stands still. He observes. He waits, and women, guided by the same natural instinct Schopenhauer described, feel drawn to his self-possession. Schopenhauer's brutal truth wasn't meant to make men hate women. It was meant to make them understand themselves. Because once you see through the illusion, you stop resenting it. You learn to play the game consciously. You respect women not as mystical beings, but as reflections of nature's design, complex, emotional, necessary. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by attraction, remember, it's not fate, it's biology. It's not soulmates, it's survival. And the more aware you become of that truth, the freer you are to love with intention, not instinct. Schopenhauer's philosophy is not a rejection of love, it's an invitation to purify it, to strip away the illusion and find what remains when desire fades, because only when you see beyond nature's manipulation can you truly experience love without losing yourself in it. To marry means to do everything possible to become the mutual tormentor of another. Schopenhauer, the line sounds cruel, but it's not. It's simply honest, because Schopenhauer knew the truth isn't always comforting, but it's always liberating. After exposing the illusion of desire, Schopenhauer went deeper into what he called the female will. He believed that women, by nature, are not driven by logic or ideals, but by an instinctive will that ensures the continuation of life. It's not evil. It's not manipulation. It's instinct, the ancient survival code of humanity itself. But for Schopenhauer, this instinct often conflicted with man's search for meaning. While a woman's nature is to preserve life, a man's soul, he said, seeks to transcend it. The male spirit looks for reason, wisdom, and freedom from the cycle of suffering. And that is where the eternal tension between man and woman begins. To the philosopher, men and women are not enemies. They are opposites in the grand design. The woman represents life's continuity. The man represents life's reflection. She brings him into the world, and he tries to understand the world she anchors him to. It's the meeting of emotion and intellect, instinct and awareness, but Schopenhauer warned when a man loses his awareness, he becomes a slave to that instinct. He starts living for validation. He confuses comfort with purpose. He gives his strength in exchange for approval. And slowly, he becomes weak, not physically but spiritually. This is what he called the tragedy of male desire. A man who wants to be loved more than he wants to be free. Schopenhauer wrote, "We seldom think of what we have, but always of what we lack. And in relationships, this lack often becomes obsession. The more a man desires, the more he loses control, and the more he loses control, the less desirable he becomes. Women, he observed, are not attracted to desperation. They're drawn to certainty, not to emotion, but to energy, to presence. That quiet, composed masculinity that doesn't chase, it attracts." To Schopenhauer, the man who awakens from illusion begins to master this energy. He stops expecting emotional perfection from women. He accepts that their moods, emotions, and needs are reflections of nature itself, ever-changing, beautiful, unpredictable, and instead of resisting it, he learns to flow with it, without losing himself. He said, "A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." That means you can control your actions, but not your desires. But if you understand your desires, you can choose not to obey them blindly. That's where your power lies, in awareness, not control. A truly masculine man, Schopenhauer believed, is one who sees through the disguise of the will. He may love a woman deeply, but he never forgets who he is without her. He doesn't depend on her for his peace, his purpose, or his identity, because once he does, he's no longer a man. He's a reflection of her emotions. Schopenhauer saw this mistake everywhere. Men collapsing under the weight of love, losing themselves in attachment, calling it passion, but passion, he said, is just a polite word for possession. True love, on the other hand, requires awareness and detachment. Scene: two figures walking opposite directions under falling leaves. When a man understands this, something inside him shifts. He no longer needs to control the woman. He no longer needs to chase her approval. He simply becomes grounded, calm, unshaken, and this calmness becomes his magnetism. Because in a world full of men begging for attention, a man who stands still becomes unforgettable. Schopenhauer's teachings are often labeled as dark, but they're not. They're brutally honest. He didn't hate women. He hated illusions. He wanted men to awaken and to stop confusing emotional dependence with love. The awakened man doesn't stop loving. He loves differently. He loves from understanding, not need. He gives freely without losing his sense of self. He can walk away, not because he doesn't care, but because he values peace over chaos. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. Schopenhauer, when you expand your vision beyond the illusion of romance, beyond the need for approval, you realize that the truest connection you'll ever have is with your own awareness. That's the beginning of masculine awakening, to see life as it is, not as you wish it to be. To love without illusion, to live without attachment, and to walk through the world, not as a victim of desire, but as its observer. Schopenhauer's brutal truth isn't a message of bitterness. It's a message of liberation. Because the man who understands women, not to control them but to understand himself through them, has already won the only battle that truly matters, the battle within his own mind. Once you've seen through the illusion of desire, the real work begins, the work of detachment. Schopenhauer believed that man's suffering doesn't come from women or from love. It comes from his attachment to things he cannot control. The moment you attach your peace to someone else's behavior, you've handed them your power, and power once given is almost never returned.